Here it is, once more. Patrice Collier's co-founder of Black Lives Matter admitting she is a Marxist.
Am I a Marxist? I'm a lot of things. I do believe in Marxism. It's a philosophy that I learned really early on in my organizing career. We were taught to learn about the systems that were criticizing capitalism.
We don't have to guess the Marxist agenda of Black Lives Matter. They tell us. They put it in a proposed legislation called the Breathe Act, which they want your congressman and your 2 senators to pass. But it's not a Breathe Act at all. It's not going to fill your lungs full of air, but it might fill your stomach with something else. It's more akin to a gag me act, a finger down the throats of patriotic, law-abiding, family-loving, crime-free Americans. So let's get that barf bag ready. There are more than 24 demands in the Black Lives Matter Breathe Act, almost all of them focused on letting criminals roam free with easy get-out-of-jail cards if prosecuted at all, and even punishing you, yes, you, the average citizen, for having put some of them in jail in the first place. You should start feeling queasy about now. If not, I've got more, lots more. All right, let's see what fingers Black Lives Matter want to shove down the throats of Americans and what's going to spew out afterwards. Finger number 1 is a chisel we are all too familiar with: defund and abolish the police. So what spews forth when you get rid of the police? No need to linger here. Rape, murder, robberies, shootings, assaults, child sex trafficking, battered spouses. Yeah, you get the picture. Basically, no, that's not the word I'm quite looking for. Without question, this bill would upend civilized society. Finger number 2 is a demand to eliminate the Drug Enforcement Agency. Now who would that make happy? Well, drug lords, of course, such as Rafael Caro Quintero. Mr. Quintero is a Mexican drug lord fugitive who kidnapped and murdered one of our own drug enforcement agents, Enrique Kiki Camarena. Yeah, this drug monster would be happy. But happy too would be all the illegal drug traffickers, suppliers, and manufacturers. But you gotta think that would be an insult to all the drug lords and traffickers already sitting in jail, right? That brings us to gagging finger number 3, the decriminalization and expunging of all drug offenses. Under this plan, over 66,000 drug offenders would be released from federal prison. Not only that, but the Breathe Act calls for reparations to be paid to those drug offenders for having locked them up in the first place. That's tax money reparations going to drug traffickers because we dared lock them up for selling heroin, cocaine, crack, fentanyl, and Molly, drugs that killed nearly 70,000 people each year in the United States. If we're going to do this, why not then give tax reparations to prostitutes for having locked them up? Well, that's in the Breathe Act too. Yes, the new Johns of prostitutes could very well be the jails themselves, providing these working girls with an additional wage. Sounds like double dipping to me, and I don't mean that in a crude way. First, the prostitutes would get paid by their male companion, and once arrested, get paid again for being locked up. Some might rightfully consider that to be a lucrative business. But locking people up might be impossible to begin with under the Breathe Act. Finger number 4 of the Breathe Act demands that all federal prisons be shut down. And if the bill passes, even your local jails will be in jeopardy because the legislation provides federal tax dollars so your state can shut down its jail cells as well. Now, I know what you're thinking. Where will all these wife beaters, child molesters, and sadistic rapists go? That question, well, it's not answered in this legislation. Community service, perhaps? Writing 50 times on a blackboard, "I will not rape a child again." Who knows? They're not telling us. But you don't have to suppose whether they'll go back to thieving, murdering, swindling, and drug trafficking. And why would they not? If this act is passed, the police will be gone, and the jails to hold them will be demolished. Which brings rise to the questions of finger number 5, the end of life sentencing for convicted murderers, and the end of mandatory sentencing laws altogether. So I'm confused. If there are no prisons or jails, where would these criminals be sentenced to life in prison to begin with? Certainly not in time out of their basements, I hope. But if so, how would we even know they stayed in those confined rooms? Because finger number 6 bans ankle monitors. All tracking devices would be banned under this law. I guess we have to trust the criminal's word for his or her whereabouts. Sounds like a good deal if you're a felon, right? But if that's not enough to sweeten the deal for yardbirds, convicts, and perps to support this legislation, the Breathe Act sweetens the deal with finger number 7 by forgiving all outstanding court debts and will give back felons the right to vote, even while they're in prison, which makes no sense under this bill because prisons and jails would have been abolished to begin with. It's a head-scratcher. Giving felons the right to vote will anger many, of course, but perhaps no more so than illegal immigrants who are strictly forbidden, well, if the law is enforced, from taking part in America's electoral process because they are not U.S. citizens, which makes sense. But we know that Black Lives Matter does not want to anger those who cross into our country illegally. So the Breathe Act is especially generous toward those criminal aliens by giving them finger number 8. And beware, this is not for the squeamish. First, all laws criminalizing illegal entry to the United States would be repealed. Second, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, better known as ICE, will be abolished. That comes as a no-brainer. Third, these undocumented aliens will also be given the right to vote, just like their criminal brothers and sisters who are now sitting in jail. And fourth, excuse me, I'm feeling a bit queasy on this one, these newly arrived invaders will be given a lifetime of education, you guessed it, for free. It almost makes you want to renounce your citizenship, move to Mexico for a month, and then come back in as an alien. And why not? What's to lose? You can still vote, but you would be a better educated voter with all that free education. That may sound good if you're an adult, but if you bring kids back into the United States, or you already have them here, beware about that free education. Because under the Breathe Act, finger number 9 would ban police resource officers in the public schools. So, if some maniac kid or adult decides to shoot up the school, you better hope your child is equipped with a bulletproof backpack and a heap load of prayers. Because if the Breathe Act is passed, there's nothing to stop a deranged student from shooting up that school. First, as I mentioned, there wouldn't be a school resource officer to stand in his or her way, but the bill also calls for finger number 10, the removal of armed security, metal detectors, and surveillance equipment from the public schools. Now here's where the Breathe Act makes the veins in your brain want to pop and the muscles in your stomach regurgitate. Finger number 11 calls for the closure of all juvenile detention centers. So, with no adult jails or prisons if this bill passes, a student could shoot up a school with no metal detector to spot his weapon, no police officer to stop his entry, no surveillance equipment to see him coming, and no jail to put him in afterwards if he murders his classmates. Now how's that for black progressivism? There would be no need for juvenile detention centers anyway if this bill is passed, because finger number 12 demands that states, cities, and counties repeal all juvenile offenses. Black Lives Matter seems to have no fear that criminals will run rampant in the streets if this bill passes, because they also include a provision to take away major incentives for committing crimes, the lust for money. Apparently believing that money is the root of all evil, Black Lives Matter proposes in the Breathe Act finger number 13, universal income for all. Are we really supposed to believe that socialist countries are void of crime simply because criminals have a steady income whether they work or not? The bill offers no detail on what it means by universal income for all, but virtually all proponents of this system push the idea that land and natural resources would be redistributed equally to move away from capitalist inequality and towards socialist equality. These are nothing but fancy, confusing, and blithering words that describe socialism, Marxism, and communism. The idea is that if every American has a basic income, then businesses would be forced to give workers more freedoms, more rights, because workers can simply walk off the job if their demands are not met and rely on their state-gifted basic income. It's power to the working class that would make Karl Marx, well, proud. Now, What are the chances of this Black Lives Matter, the Breathe Act, ever seeing the light of day in Congress? Well, probably about the same chance as those words of endearment, mother, father, brother, sister, son, and daughter, might be stricken from the lexicon of the lower chamber of the United States Congress. But wait, that has already happened, hasn't it? It seems like the only power good, decent, patriotic Americans have left is the power to underestimate the ruthless ambition of the radical socialist forces that are now steering the destiny of this great country. Black Lives Matter and their Antifa communist comrades fight with Molotov cocktails, baseball bats, concrete blocks, and condom bags filled with urine. Their goal is to point democracy away from whoever generates the most votes and toward whoever can create the most destruction, fear, and violence. Apologies will not defeat them. Pandering will only embolden them. Ignoring them will create vengeful monsters. They will be heard. And this is before the Breathe Act, if passed, sets free to the streets tens of thousands of hardened criminals who will owe their newfound liberty and freedom to the Black Lives Matter movement.